mich nur als Imposant.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION The World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Jyotsna Kumar. And on the show today, Hurricane Milton, now a Category 5 storm, is advancing towards Florida, threatening severe damage and loss of life. While the storm is expected to weaken before it makes landfall on Wednesday night, Milton has the potential to be one of the most destructive hurricanes on record for West Central Florida. What has caused this rapid intensification of the storm? We'll discuss just that on the show today.
Also on World DNA, in West Asia, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israeli airstrikes killed 2 successors to Hezbollah's slain leader, while Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said Hashem Safiuddin, the man essentially expected to be the successor of Nasrallah, had probably been eliminated. They're not clear on that yet. This comes as Israel expanded its ground offensive against the Iran-backed group with a 4th Army Division deployed into South Lebanon. We'll get you all the details on that front as well. This and a lot more right here on World DNA. Let's start with the headlines.
Syrian government says 7 civilians killed in Israeli airstrike in Damascus. Reports say attack targeted buildings used by Iran's Revolutionary Guards.
Israeli Defense Forces say they cannot confirm the death of Hashem Safiuddin after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Hezbollah chief Nasrallah's projected successor has been killed.
Hurricane Milton intensifies to Category 5 again as Florida braces for a direct hit. U.S. President Joe Biden warns storm could be worse in over 100 years, urges residents to flee.
U.S. Justice Department says Afghan man arrested in Oklahoma for allegedly plotting to carry out an attack on election day on behalf of the Islamic State group.
Japan's new Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba abolishes a ministerial post dedicated to economic cooperation with Russia. Move signifies shift in Tokyo's strategy towards relations with Moscow.
Two members of India's territorial army kidnapped by terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir's Anantnag says, as per reports, one returns safely. Search operations continue for the second.
Brazil's Supreme Court lifts ban on Elon Musk-owned social media platform X, platform to be made accessible again to users in its biggest Latin American market within 24 hours.
Chelsea's Cole Palmer has been named England's Men's Player of the Year. The 22-year-old finishes ahead of Real Madrid's Jude Bellingham and Arsenal's Bukayo Saka. Hurricane Milton is barreling towards Florida's battered Gulf Coast as an enormous Category 5 storm now.
Absolutely. And it is triggering massive traffic jams and fuel shortages as officials order more than 1 million people to flee before it slams into the Tampa Bay area. Milton, which exploded on Monday into one of the most intense Atlantic hurricanes on record, was forecast to make landfall late on Wednesday or early Thursday.
Satellite images show Milton regaining strength in the Gulf of Mexico to become a Category 5 hurricane once again before it hits the west coast of Florida.
This could be the worst storm hit Florida in over a century.
U.S. President Joe Biden said fleeing Hurricane Milton was a matter of life and death on Tuesday, and he urged those ordered to evacuate to do so immediately, after the massive storm lashed Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula with heavy rain and wind on its way to Florida's Gulf Coast. A view from the International Space Station showed a monster storm that's expected to grow even larger before making landfall in the Tampa Bay area on Wednesday. Highways leading out of the area were jammed with evacuating Floridians. A direct hit on the bay would be the first since 1921.
Milton underwent what we call rapid intensification.
Dr. Daniel Guilford is a climate scientist for Climate Central.
Rapid intensification is something that is becoming more common in a warming world. We know that as human beings increase the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, largely by burning fossil fuels, we are increasing the temperature all around the planet. And in certain places like the Gulf of Mexico, temperatures are actually growing faster than around other places on the planet over the ocean. And that means that there's a lot more fuel available to these storms than there would have been if we hadn't burned greenhouse gases.
While Milton's intensity was likely to fluctuate, it was also expected to double in size, putting hundreds of miles of coastline within the storm surge danger zone, according to the National Hurricane Center. Florida's densely populated west coast is still reeling from the devastating Hurricane Helene less than 2 weeks ago. Relief efforts remain ongoing throughout much of the U.S. Southeast after Helene made landfall on September 26th, killing more than 200 people across 6 states and causing billions of dollars in damage.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tenani sent us this report from New York. Listen.
The powerful Hurricane Milton is barreling towards Florida, prompting urgent evacuation warnings. Tampa Mayor Jane Castor issued a die warning. Quote, "If you don't leave, you will die." Forecasters predict Milton will make landfall as a major hurricane around the Tampa Bay area late on Wednesday or early Thursday. Residents are fleeing or preparing for the worst. Long lines of cars are evacuating the coast, while others are stocking up on supplies and boarding up homes. Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis has declared a state of emergency, and President Biden has approved federal assistance. U.S. airlines are already canceling or rerouting flights to and from the region. With Milton's landfall imminent, Floridians are bracing for catastrophic winds, storm surges, and flooding. Excess winds upwards of 100 miles per hour are also expected all the way to Orlando, but the region is still churning in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. Hurricane Helene recovery, for example, in North Carolina, has been severely hampered by a lack of running water, and the mayor says that's unlikely to change anytime soon, with schools and businesses closed indefinitely. President Biden has canceled a trip overseas to Germany and Angola to monitor the situation. Susan Terfani reporting from New York for WION World this one.
All right, to discuss more on the situation, we're being joined by Sherry Goodman from Washington, D.C. She is the Secretary General of International Military Council on Climate and Security and a former First Deputy Under Secretary of Defense Environmental Security. She is also the author of Threat Multiplier, Climate, Military Leadership, and the Fight for Global Security. Thank you so much for taking out your time and joining us on the show.
Pleasure.
Let me just begin by asking you, what, according to you, are your biggest concerns about the storm, and what can you tell us more about the kind of damage we're expecting from the storm?
Well, I'm deeply concerned about the people in the path of the storm, because this is projected to be the strongest storm in over 100 years, and it's made more and more likely because of the heat wave, the marine heat wave we're experiencing. So we have met our climate future, and we're experiencing it right now. So I hope that everyone who has received an evacuation order has heeded it and moved out of harm's way because, as the mayor said, this is going to be a very deadly storm. Our military bases in the area have already evacuated people, and of course they're there to provide rescue as needed. But this is going to be a deadly storm. I expect we're already still recovering from the damage of Hurricane Helene just last week. And now there's going to be another storm on top of it, compounding and increasing the risk to people and infrastructure. Water, power will likely be out for some time.
Ms. Goodman, and as you just mentioned, Florida's just made it past Helene. It's barely been a few days since then, and now this Milton, which is considered or being pegged as the worst storm in a century. At this point, what kind of preparations would be in store for this kind of damage which is now being anticipated?
Well, they have made a lot of preparations. First of all, the evacuation orders, as you played on your show already, the mayor instructing people that they need to leave the area. They've also tried to shore up the area, move things out of harm's way, move boats, move as much as possible to hold it down. But the winds are expected to be so strong, and the storm surge, really, that's the danger of this storm. In Hurricane Helene, the storm surge was on average over 5 feet, and this could be double that in some of the most affected areas. Plus, it's supposed to go across both coasts of Florida, all the way from the Gulf Coast across to the East Coast, with highly damaging winds. So I expect there to be significant damage to infrastructure, and hopefully by the evacuation orders, we can minimize the loss of life. But that is also still a very severe concern.
Right. And now you're also the author of Threat Multiplier, Climate, Military Leadership, and the Fight for Global Security. Right. So according to you, if you could simplify, how has this intensified? What has made Milton the third fastest intensifying Atlantic storm? And how do you address this? How can we solve this going forward in the future? Are we expecting more such storms to come in?
Well, unfortunately, we absolutely are. I mean, climate change is a threat multiplier because it increases the risks we face all around the world, in every part of the world, because of rising temperatures. And most severely now we see in hurricanes because of this marine heat wave. We're boiling the ocean. And at this time of year, in this part of the Western Hemisphere, the oceans are at their warmest now. And so that's why we see this rapid intensification of the storm. And that's why we see it pick up so much energy as it moves towards the coast. So what do we need to do? We need to accelerate through the energy transition. We also need to become more resilient. We're going to have to be able to withstand higher sea levels, stronger storm surge, higher winds. And we're going to have to really rethink how we become resilient in the climate era. And we also need early warning systems. And I'm thankful that they've worked fairly well in this case so that people are able to move out of harm's way. But we need to do even more to improve our predictive capabilities to manage in the climate era.
Ms. Goodman, the kind of visuals we've seen coming in, and we've seen it on social media, they seem extremely concerning. We've also heard of people who are still refusing to leave or to evacuate in spite of orders. So there are a lot of reports coming in. But of course, here's only hoping that it passes off soon, Milton, and there is least amount of destruction that we see in the wake of this as well. Thank you so much. That was Sherry Goodman joining us from Washington, D.C., Secretary General of the International Military Council on Climate and Security.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we move to West Asia. Suspense continues over the fate of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah's successor, Hashem Safieddine.
Well, as Israeli army continues to strike South Hezbollah's Beirut stronghold, of course, this is south of Beirut, that is a Hezbollah stronghold. Israel is not holding back. The Israeli military spokesperson, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, said Safieddine was present at Hezbollah's intelligence headquarters in Beirut when Israel struck the building on the 4th of October.
The footage showed flares from an explosion in the Al-Daya neighborhood where the Hezbollah leader is believed to have been killed. However, Hagari said Safieddine's death has not been confirmed.
We struck the intelligence compound in Beirut in Al Daya neighborhood. This is the command center of the head of the intelligence, Abu Abdullah Murtada, and we also know that Hashim Saifuddin was with him. The results of these strikes are being checked. Hezbollah is trying to conceal information. We will know and update the public.
חיזבאללה מנסה להסתיר את הפרטים. אנחנו נדע ונעדכן את הציבור.
Earlier, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, without naming them, said that the Israeli military has killed the would-be successors of late Nasrallah. That implies he's talking about Safieddin, but there is no confirmation on that front. While Defense Minister of Israel, Yoav Gallant, naming Hashim Safieddin, said he was likely killed in last week's strike in Beirut. Again, no confirmation there.
Meanwhile, Lebanese state-run media reported massive destruction in a series of strikes in southern suburbs of Beirut after the Israeli army warned residents to evacuate. The Israeli army targeted the main road at Al-Kafat and razed 4 residential buildings in the Burj al-Barajne area. In southern Lebanon, IDF dismantled a Hezbollah tunnel crossing into Israel as the Israeli army continues to carry out ground operations in the area. After the deployment of its 4th Troop Division in the country, IDF said the tunnel was detected a few months ago but destroyed during the ground operation launched last week. Israeli attack helicopters were also seen firing missiles on Tuesday as the conflict with Hezbollah continued in southern Lebanon. The Israeli military said Hezbollah launched more than 170 rockets across the border on Tuesday, while the Iran-backed group has warned that it will intensify attacks on Israel, including the northern port city of Haifa, if it continues to strike Lebanon. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned Lebanon that it could face a destruction like Gaza. In his speech, Netanyahu called on the Lebanese people to stand up to Hezbollah.
This is a message to the people of Lebanon. Do you remember when your country was called the Pearl of the Middle East? I do. So what happened to Lebanon? A gang of tyrants and terrorists destroyed it. That's what happened. Lebanon was once known for its tolerance, for its beauty. Today, it's a place of chaos, a place of war. Israel withdrew from Lebanon 25 years ago. On the other hand, the Syrian government said 7 civilians were killed in an Israeli airstrike in Damascus on Tuesday. The defense ministry said women and children were among the dead in the strike on a residential and commercial building in the Mazeh neighborhood of the capital. In other development, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has postponed a trip to the United States scheduled for this week, delaying a planned meeting with his U.S. counterpart Lloyd Austin. Furthermore, the U.S. State Department said more than 1,000 U.S. citizens, along with family members, have left Lebanon aboard U.S. organized flights in the past week. Israel faces a difficult choice after coming under a 200 missile barrage from Iran exactly a week ago. This is while Tehran warns of consequences should Israel retaliate. Israel knows that weakened Iran still holds a powerful deterrent, the nuclear option. Our next story decodes the options and challenges before Israel and the U.S.
Iran's audacious missile attack on Israel has set the stage for a potentially catastrophic confrontation. Iran launched 200 missiles a week ago. Tehran warned Israel, saying the missile barrage was revenge for the assassination of the Hamas and Hezbollah chiefs. Now, as Israel weighs its options, the spectre of Iran's nuclear capabilities casts a long shadow over the region. Former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has once again pushed for strikes against Iran's nuclear program. Bennett sees this as a rare window of opportunity to cripple both the Iranian regime and its nuclear ambitions. However, such actions could provoke a devastating response from Iran.
Any attack against infrastructure in Iran will provoke an even stronger response, and our enemies know what targets we're looking at inside the Zionist regime's territory.
CIA Director William Burns cautions that while Iran hasn't officially decided to build a nuclear weapon, any move towards weaponization would likely be detected quickly. US officials warn that if Tehran chooses to push forward, it could reach weapons-grade uranium in less than 2 weeks. US President Joe Biden has publicly urged Israel against attacking Iranian nuclear sites, warning they would likely be ineffective and could plunge the region into a full-scale war. On the other hand, former President Donald Trump argued that Israel should hit nuclear sites first and worry about the rest later.
But when they asked him that question, the answer should have been, hit the nuclear first and worry about the rest later. And that's what they should, if they're going to do it.
Since the US pulled out of the 2015 nuclear deal, Iran has made swift advances in its nuclear capabilities. Tehran claims its nuclear program is peaceful, but its enrichment activities suggest otherwise. Israel has vowed that it will punish Iran. It was the second time Iran directly attacked Israel. In April, a barrage of around 300 drones and missiles triggered a measured Israeli retaliation that saw a single Iranian air defense radar installation destroyed. So will Israel choose to absorb the blow and not retaliate hard against Iran this time too? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
All right, moving to other global stories, a fresh war of words has broken out between China and the Philippines over the disputed South China Sea.
The Philippines has accused China's Coast Guard of firing water cannons at government ships taking supplies to fishermen at a disputed shoal in the South China Sea. Beijing, on the other hand, has dismissed these claims, saying it took controlled measures after Filipino boats intruded in its waters. The incident is in the two countries' latest run-in regarding the Scarborough Shoal, a fishing ground within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone that China claims as its own territory.
Scarborough Shoal, known as Huangqian Island in China, is rich in marine biodiversity. It has been a focal point of territorial disputes primarily between China and the Philippines. Both countries have been claiming sovereignty over it, although it falls under the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. The shoal is located about 222 kilometers west of the Philippine island of Luzon.
The South China Sea has seen increasingly alarming confrontations between Chinese and Filipino Coast Guard ships and accompanying vessels since last year. There have been at least 12 incidents of confrontations between China and the Philippines in the past 12 months.
In June, the Philippines accused China of launching a brutal assault with bladed weapons during a South China Sea clash. It released a video showing Chinese Coast Guard officers brandishing an axe and other bladed or pointed tools at the Filipino soldiers and slashing their rubber boat.
In August, Chinese and Philippine vessels collided during a confrontation near a disputed shoal in the South China Sea. Both the countries blamed each other for attempting to use Sabina Shoal as a semi-permanent floating platform to further their respective operations. North Korea is openly embracing its nuclear ambitions. Kim Jong-un is pledging to accelerate the country's path to becoming a nuclear superpower.
North Korean leader is warning the world of Pyongyang's readiness to use nuclear weapons if threatened. Kim aims to reshape the balance of power on the Korean peninsula and beyond, placing regional stability on a knife's edge. In a recent speech, Kim has been unrestrained, accusing South Korea and the U.S. of sparking tensions with their alliance, which includes expanded military drills and the deployment of U.S. bombers. This escalation is pushing North Korea to ramp up its own military capabilities, with reports suggesting new submarine construction and the production of highly enriched uranium that could be used for weapons.
North Korea has earlier showcased its potential nuclear-armed drone, which can silently travel underwater with a nuclear warhead. For Kim, this fast-track approach reflects more than just a desire for nuclear status. It signals a broader strategy of deterrence against a world he perceives as hostile towards North Korea. While South Korea showcased its latest military hardware on Armed Forces Day. Kim Jong-un has been keen to show that North Korea is not merely watching from the sidelines.
The nation's advancing nuclear arsenal serves as both a warning and a statement of its regional dominance. North Korea is also poised to formalize a significant constitutional amendment that will label South Korea as a hostile nation and redraw its maritime boundaries.
A recently expanded deterrence agreement between the US and South Korea has upped the stakes, but the question remains, how far will Kim Jong-un go? His plans for a nuclear-powered North Korea are no longer theoretical. They're a rapidly unfolding reality, adding a new and dangerous dimension to an already volatile situation.
And it's time now for a quick break, but don't go anywhere. On the other side of World DNA, Southeast Asian leaders are gathering in Laos for a high-stakes ASEAN summit, with Myanmar's civil war and escalating tensions in the South China Sea taking center stage.
Russia continues to make advances in the Donetsk region, putting pressure on Ukrainian army. In the latest, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed its forces have brought under control villages of Zoloto, Niva and Zoryan Pershe. We are going to be bringing you a complete report on that front as well. This and a lot more lined up for you on the other side of World DNA. Come right back after this short break.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I should push myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
Mozambique holds a general election on the 9th of October, but voters fear they will be deprived of a fair and democratic electoral process. The Southern African nation and is one of the poorest countries in the world, despite its vast natural gas deposits. Kenya's Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua apologizes to his boss, President William Ruto, and citizens after lawmakers launched an impeachment proceeding.
If you insubordinate the state, you are not worth being a state officer.
And Ethiopia's capital hosted thousands at the Irecha Heritage Festival on one end of Addis Ababa, and on the other, thousands celebrated an annual religious festival marked by the lighting of bonfires, according to the beliefs of the local Orthodox Christian faithful. That's this week on World of Africa, at these times on WION. World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is One.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
WION brings you a special business talk show where we bring forth the stories of business leaders.
From breakthrough technologies to visionary leadership. We will unlock the trends, the tactics, and dive into the minds of the industry's most influential leaders.
WION brings you this special series to uncover what drives them in a candid talk show, WION Business Masters.
Vielleicht nur als Imposant.
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar, and my colleague Shivan Chanana. Let's start with the headlines.
Doctors' body in India announces nationwide hunger strike today to support ongoing protest against the rape and murder of a trainee doctor. At least 48 senior doctors of RG Kaur Medical College and Hospital in Kolkata resign in solidarity.
আমাদেরকে জ্ঞান দেবেন না নইলে গতি ছাড়তে হবে শাসক তোমার কিসের ভয় শাসক তোমার কে তুমি আমি আমার কে এই লড়াই লড়াই হবে না
North Korea's army to completely cut off roads and railways connected to South Korea from today and fortify areas on its side of the border. This comes in response to recent war exercises held in South Korea.
Israeli Defense Forces say they cannot confirm the death of Hashim Safiuddin, the man expected to be the successor of Hezbollah's slain leader Nasrallah, after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Hezbollah chief Nasrallah's projected successor has been killed.
Syrian government says 7 civilians killed in Israeli airstrike in Damascus. Reports say attack targeted building used by Iran's Revolutionary Guards.
Hurricane Milton intensifies to Category 5 again as Florida brace for a direct hit. US President Biden warns storm could be the worst in over 100 years, urges residents to flee.
U.S. Justice Department says Afghan man arrested in Oklahoma for allegedly plotting to carry out an attack on Election Day on behalf of the Islamic State group.
Chelsea's Cole Palmer has been named England's Men's Player of the Year. The 22-year-old finishes ahead of Real Madrid's Jude Bellingham and Arsenal's Bukayo Saka. Southeast Asian leaders are gathering in Laos for a high-stakes ASEAN summit.
And this is with Myanmar's civil war and escalating tensions in the South China Sea taking center stage. The ASEAN summit will be followed by 2 days of meetings with global powers, including China, the US, and Russia, which are contending for influence in the region.
Thank you.
The Association of Southeast Asian Nations is struggling to find a way to make member Myanmar comply with a peace plan to resolve a worsening crisis that has killed over 5,000 people since the army ousted a civilian government in 2021. The bloc is also grappling with China's increasingly assertive posture in the South China Sea that has led to fresh confrontations this year with ASEAN members Philippines and Vietnam.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be in Laos to attend the 21st ASEAN-India Summit. India's role in the region continues to be important, especially amid the growing competition for influence between the global powers.
The U.S., represented by Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, will focus on human rights situation in Myanmar, China's behavior in the South China Sea, and the war in Ukraine at the summit.
When the region and the world cover.
Washington is also voicing concerns about China's support for Russia as the geopolitical landscape shifts. At the ASEAN summit proceeds, all eyes are on how the region will address these critical challenges.
All right, moving to our coverage of the Russia-Ukraine war. Russia continues to make advances in the Donetsk region, putting pressure on Ukrainian army.
In the latest, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed its forces have brought under control villages of Zolota Neva and Zoryan Pershe. Now, these villages lie to the north and to the south of the town of Kurakhov, one of the focal points of military activity on the Eastern Front, and have an estimated population of a few hundred residents each. However, official Ukrainian accounts of the fighting made no reference to control of either village being lost. The General Staff last referred to Zolota Neva as one of the two villages coming under a series of Russian assaults.
As heavy fighting rages on in eastern Ukraine, authorities said that one person was killed and 6 others were wounded after Moscow's forces dropped 3 guided aerial bombs at the town of Kostynivka. The bombs hit 2 residential buildings.
Moscow-installed authorities in eastern Ukraine said that a Ukrainian drone attack killed 2 people in the frontline village of Zyetsev. Shifting focus to northeastern Ukraine, in Kharkiv, 2 people were killed and 30 were wounded in Russian attacks.
On the other hand, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Kiev's forces were maintaining sufficient pressure on Russian troops in the Kursk region, where it launched a mass incursion in August.
The fighting in the Kursk region is now in its 3rd month already, and we are maintaining the necessary pressure on Russia in this area. Chief of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, Budanov, also delivered a detailed report on the ongoing processes in the enemy system and our influence on them.
Meanwhile, new NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte pledged NATO's greater support to Ukraine in the fight against Russia, acknowledging that the more military the West provides, the faster the war will end. That's what they assume. Rutte was particularly concerned about winters in Ukraine as Russia continues to attack the country's critical energy infrastructure.
Ukraine could be facing its toughest winter since the full-scale invasion began.
With the race to the White House heating up, veteran journalist Bob Woodward has claimed that the former President Donald Trump secretly sent medical equipment to Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Absolutely. Woodward makes the claim in his new book, War, which is set to release in a week's time. The book says that Putin accepted the offer, but at the same time warned Trump not to reveal the details of the supplies that could lead to a potential political backlash in the U.S., adversely impacting the former president.
According to the book, the Republican presidential candidate and the Russian president might have spoken at least 7 times since 2021. Woodward, in his book, alleged that Trump last spoke with Putin in a private phone call from his Mar-a-Lago residence in early 2024. However, the book does not reveal what that conversation was about.
The veteran journalist further slammed Trump in his book, calling him reckless, impulsive, and is worse than former President Richard Nixon. Notably, Bob Woodward and his colleague Carl Bernstein broke the infamous Watergate scandal that saw the end of Richard Nixon's presidency about 50 years ago. Trump
Trump's campaign spokesperson slammed Woodward's allegations as false. He also added that the book deserves to be used only as toilet paper.
Meanwhile, Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance at a rally in Michigan said that he didn't know that Bob Woodward was still alive, while also calling him a hack.
So have I talked to Donald Trump about his calls with Vladimir Putin? No. I've never had that conversation with Donald Trump in my life. But if Donald Trump, even if it's true, look, is there something wrong with speaking to world leaders? No? Is there anything wrong with engaging in diplomacy? Kamala Harris's approach has been to hide in a basement, hide from the American people, and hide from world leaders. And you know what that's gotten us? We're on the verge of World War III. It's a disgrace and it's a complete failure of a foreign policy.
Asian stocks rose as Wall Street was boosted by a tech surge, and predictions on Federal Reserve rate cuts leveled off.
However, crazy Chinese stock swings are igniting the biggest ever trading frenzy. Shares in Australia and Japan rose, as did Hong Kong equity futures, reversing sharp declines on Tuesday. US equity futures dropped early on Wednesday, and this comes after the S&P 500 rose 1% to top 5,750 points. The tech-heavy Nasdaq 100 advanced 1.6% on Tuesday.
Chip makers were among the market leaders, with Nvidia extending a 5-day rally to 14% gains in U.S. stocks placed benchmarks within striking distance of their all-time highs. This comes as investors begin to prepare for the next round of corporate earnings.
The spotlight will still be on China's stock market. The current stimulus package may not be enough to persuade investors that China's stock market can prolong its recent surge. According to an index of Chinese equities traded in the US, fell 6.9% overnight. China markets are warning that more stimulus is needed to fuel rally. Early trends show that China holiday spending lags pre-COVID era, and this suggests more stimulus is needed. Still, the turnover in mainland China and Hong Kong bourses jumped to a record.
Separately, the bond market king, Mohammed El-Erian, said the guessing game that's taking place over the Fed's path is creating market volatility. Billionaire investor Ray Dalio said that bonds are a risky investment given recent fluctuations in treasury markets.
In the commodities market, oil clawed back some gains early on Wednesday after losses of more than 4% on Tuesday. The losses in crude were driven by worries of a slowdown in demand from China, given Beijing stopped short of launching more stimulus. Investors will eye the minutes of the Fed's September meeting, set to be released later on Wednesday, for more cues. As climate change threatens our beloved coffee crops, big players are brewing up solutions to keep our caffeine fix alive.
And this is with rising prices and extreme weather. The coffee industry faces a bitter brew. Will your morning cup of coffee become a luxury item soon? Take a look at this next story to find out.
As climate change heats up, the coffee industry is facing a bitter brew of challenges that could stir up future beverage trends. Rising temperatures and extreme weather, especially in key coffee-producing regions like Brazil and Guatemala, are threatening both the quality and availability of a beloved Java. This year's droughts have sent prices for Arabica beans to the highest levels since 2011. For consumers, this caffeinated chaos means pricier coffee and potentially fewer choices on store shelves. Starbucks, which pours about 3% of the world's coffee into our cups and partners with over 450,000 farms, is brewing a response to these challenges. The company has recently acquired research farms in Costa Rica and Guatemala to develop climate-resilient coffee varieties and explore innovative agricultural techniques. But what does this mean for coffee lovers? As big brands grapple with these climate pressures, they might have to pass costs on to consumers. This could lead to a shift in consumer behavior, with folks seeking more sustainable brews to justify the higher prices. Moreover, eco-conscious consumers are demanding transparency about sourcing and sustainability practices. As climate impacts ripple through the coffee supply chain, beverage trends may shift toward greener options, with consumers favoring brands that prioritize sustainability. In the brewing storm of climate challenges, the world's morning ritual faces a bitter shot of espresso reality. So it's time to stir things up for a sustainable future. Business Bureau Report WION, World is One.
Let's now take a look at the developments from the world of technology. A new independent body in Ireland will allow social media users in the European Union to challenge content moderation decisions on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Backed by Meta's Oversight Board Trust and certified by Ireland's media regulator, the body will function under the EU Digital Services Act as an alternative to court proceedings. Called Appeals Centre Europe, it will begin operations by year-end, starting with Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube cases, with plans to expand to other platforms. A team of experts will review each case within 90 days, ensuring decisions align with platform policies. The centre will be overseen by 7 non-executive directors.
A U.S. federal judge has ruled that the Federal Trade Commission can move forward with its antitrust lawsuit against Amazon. This decision marks a significant setback for Amazon, which has spent months attempting to dismiss the case. The trial is scheduled for October 2026. The FTC, joined by attorneys general from 18 states and Puerto Rico, has claimed that Amazon is using its market dominance to raise prices, overcharge sellers and stifle competition. The lawsuit, filed in September 2023 after years of investigation, is one of the largest legal challenges in Amazon's history.
Uber is set to launch an AI assistant powered by OpenAI's GPT-4o to help the drivers switch to electric vehicles. Announced at its Go Get Zero event in London, the assistant will offer personalized advice based on location and available incentives. This move is part of Uber's broader push to reduce emissions. The company has committed $800 million to help its drivers fully transition to electric vehicles by 2040. The AI tool, debuting in the U.S. early next year, will expand globally and handle broader queries by 2025.
All right, over to cricket now. England trailed Pakistan by 460 runs in the first test in Multan.
Zach Crawley and Joe Root fought back for the Three Lions after Pakistan posted an imposing 556 in the first innings.